Hello and welcome to TSL Talk for round 15. Today we're joined by an on-screen professional, ABC Grandstand's very own Alistair Nicholson. Alistair, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Stubbsy.
The TSL enjoyed a great inaugural season, upsets, close finals, and a terrific grand final. How have you seen the second season so far?
I think it's been a good second season so far. I think obviously one team looks like it's really kicked on in 2010 and the others have got a bit of catch-up work to do. Clarence is playing football that I think everyone would want each club in the TSL to be playing. They move the ball really quickly, they use the ball well. Even when their best players have been out, they've still been able to produce a high level of football. So it's now up to the other clubs, I guess, to try and catch up. Some might think that, you know, to have one team out on top, undefeated, with 200 percentage points is not good for a competition, but at least it gives all the others something to aim for, I suppose.
Where do you think the competition needs to improve? There's been talk about salary cap and lifting that. Do you think that's one of the areas that could attract better players and keep the better players in the competition?
I think it needs to be looked at. Whether some of the clubs at this stage early in the new competition can afford to go with an increase in salary cap remains to be seen. There will be some who can afford it and probably others that can't, so maybe that would create a greater divide. But I think it's something that needs to be looked at, and if we want to retain the best players in the state, when you're competing with the SANFL and the Waffle salary caps of over $300,000, it's very hard to keep good players in Tasmania, and we want to be luring Ian Callanan back, those types of players. The Grimer boys are playing in South Australia. You know, it'll be good to see them playing in Tassie again, and to do that, you need to give them, you know, the right kind of reward to come here. So also I think there's possibly room for a marquee player. Perhaps each TSL club could have a special allocation of either funding that they receive from the AFL or AFL games played in Tasmania just to recruit one high-profile player, and I think the impact they could have on a club would be high in terms of their experience, but also it would really create some real interest in the competition.
It's probably one area that the competition is missing is probably a big key goal-kicking forward. I mean, if you look at the top three this year have been Brett Gapin, Finch from up at Launceston and Darren Crawford. None of them are your classic key forwards. That's probably one area that the TSL will probably need, like you're saying, a marquee player.
Yeah, and the thing is with big key position players, you look at AFL clubs and they don't pass them up, do they? So the very best of the key position players are always going to be plucked out of Tasmania, whether they're key forwards. We see Jack Rewalt leading the Coleman medal, or even if you're talking about ruckman, where there seems to be a bit of a deficiency in the state at the moment as well. Any good ruckman, any good tall player tends to go and get drafted by the AFL. So I guess the job for the TSL clubs is to be able to recruit those types of players from elsewhere, and to do that they probably need a bit more than $70,000 in their cap, I think.
The ABC television game this Saturday is a massive clash between Glenorchy and Burnie at KG5. Glenorchy plays 6th, just a game ahead of Burnie plays 7th. It's a huge bearing on the finals, this game, doesn't it?
It is, and if you told me that this would be such a big game at the start of the season, I would have been amazed. I mean, I have to admit I was one of the people who wrote Burnie off at the start of the year. I thought they'd had such a player exodus and they'd lost some real quality players as well. But Brent Plant's a new coach. He's come in and he's clearly had a real impact on that young team, and week by week they're getting better. They're stringing wins together, and the impressive thing about Burnie is they're not just beating teams down the bottom end of the ladder, they're having a real impact on teams within the top 6. So I think that's going to be a really good game. Glenorchy's not been playing football anywhere near to the level that it did last year. Still a good team, I think, and in the long run, as we go deeper towards the finals, they'll come good, I think. They're still a good team, but this will be a really good contest, and if Burnie wins the game, they're back only percentage out of the top 6 again, and still threatening to make finals, which even Brent Plant himself admits has never been in his thinking at all.
And if you had to pick a winner?
I'd probably say Glenorchy, but only just. It's at their home ground, but last year, and I know last year's completely different, there was a really good game there that Burnie got over the line by 2 points, so might be a couple of players who can remember travelling south and having some success. But Glenorchy at some point has to pull its finger out. They're not a team that should be sitting 6th on the ladder. They haven't lost that many players. They've lost Pacelli and Harwood, which are two key players in the midfield, but they get Bryce O'Garry back this week, who's a good inclusion, and I noticed Chris Glenn's thinking about strapping on the boots again. He's been playing in the twos a couple of weeks, so at this level he can certainly still have an impact.
Probably another team that's just above Glenorchy on percentage is North Launceston, and it's almost a similar season to last year for them. They started off really well, and then really fell away towards the end of the season to miss out on the finals. Is there any danger that could happen again? I think they lost 4 of the last 5, including the last 3 straight.
Yeah, they have had a bit of a poor run of form. I think North Launceston, we saw on one of our televised games probably 6 weeks ago, they gave Clarence a real run for its money at Bellerive, and I don't think North Launceston's as bad as they've been playing at the moment. Caught out by Lauderdale at the weekend, but they would have never played really at Lauderdale before. They've got some good players in the team. Crawford's obviously one of the best small forwards in the competition, and Zane Murphy, one of the best midfielders. So I think North Launceston will still make the top 6. In fact, I think the top 6 is probably pretty well decided. Whether Burnie can sneak in is unknown, but I don't even think the ladder positions are going to change enormously. Maybe Devonport could go back up to 3rd and North Hobart to 4th, I think. But yeah, I think North Launceston will get there.
The other game in the split round this weekend is Devonport at home to South Launceston. Devonport gets back Ben Reynolds, which is a massive inclusion for them.
Yeah, it certainly is, and they missed him last week, really in the dying stages of that game against Clarence when they needed a big key forward to stand up. They were getting the ball to half forward and inside 50, but Bennetts and Colbeck really couldn't fire a shot all day, and Reynolds would have provided that big strong target who really would have been a difficult matchup for a Greg Sharman and a Cameron Blight, who against, if it's not a top quality forward, they just have a picnic all day. So if those two come together again in the final series, it's going to be a ripper game, I reckon.
And even though it's a week away, it'd be great to get your opinion on the first versus second game up at Windsor Park the following week, Clarence and Launceston. Grand final preview, do you think?
Quite possibly, yeah, it could quite possibly be. Launceston, other than Clarence, obviously in the best form of any team in the competition, having won the last 8. They look like they've got their best players in good form again. They're a good, strong team. We all know that they won 3 NTFL premierships before this competition started, and it's fair to say they probably underachieved a bit last year. I think now they've got their best players playing good footy, as I say, and you never know up there at Windsor Park, although earlier in the season Clarence gave them a hiding, but that was a long time ago now, and Launceston's really hit its straps. So I don't want to tip against Clarence ever, Stubbsy. I've been trying to conjure up ways that Clarence might lose in my head, and it just doesn't happen. So I think it should be a close one, but the Roos would still be narrow favourites.
Well, Alistair, thank you very much for joining us on TSL Talk. And remember, if you can catch Alistair on each Saturday afternoon on ABC TV, and for all your stories and previews, pick up your copy of The Mercury or go to The Mercury online.